On my birthday, I overheard my son and his wife betting on my death, but I chose to live. I will never forget that moment. It was supposed to be a day of joy, filled with laughter and cake. Instead, I stood frozen, breath caught in my throat, heart racing like a wild animal. The sounds of celebration faded into a dull echo as I leaned against the wall, my hands trembling, a cold sweat rolling down my spine. They were in the kitchen, a too bright space that felt like a stage where secrets unfolded. "I'll give you $1,000 if she goes by December," my son said, his voice oozing with a casualness that made my skin crawl. He spoke lightly, like it was just a game. How much I hated that tone. "Deal," answered his wife, laughter dancing in her words, a slave to the thrill. Each chuckle was a dagger in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My family. My blood. Betting on my mortality. I felt the walls closing in around me, the air thick with disbelief. My mind raced to memories of cuddling my son as a baby, of warm hugs, of countless birthdays celebrated together. That little boy had grown into someone I barely recognized. A chill clutched my heart. How did it come to this? Outside, the sun blazed brighter than ever, yet inside the room, it felt like winter. Shadows crept along the counters, whispering dark thoughts. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the wild thump beneath my tender skin. The world around me blurred. It was all too much. How could this betrayal happen at the hands of those I loved the most? I didn't know what to do. A part of me wanted to confront them, shout, scream. But all that came out was silence, heavy and suffocating. In their laughter, I heard a ticking clock, counting down to something unthinkable. Fear gripped me. I felt a fire ignite inside, the instinct to fight, to reclaim my life. They think I am weak. They think I am finished. But I am not finished. No way. I clutched a fragile hope, a flicker within me that demanded to be fed. I left the kitchen quietly, my heart pounding. I stepped outside, the sun warm against my skin. I took a breath, filling my lungs with resolve. I chose to live. But how could I face my son again? How could I let him think I was a pawn in his cruel game? A gust of wind swept past me, rustling the leaves as if urging me to move forward. Yet, as I looked back at the house, a question hung in the air. Would I confront them? Or would I live my life in shadows, wary of those who should love me? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sun dipped below the horizon, spilling brilliant colors across the sky like a canvas smeared with hope and despair. My heartbeat slowed, yet the panic remained, a dull ache settling in my chest. I was alive, but the weight of betrayal bore down on me. I turned away from the fading light and walked to the small park across from my home, desperate to escape the walls that had begun to feel so suffocating. As I meandered along the gravel path, thoughts flew like birds in the wind, each chirp reminding me of laughter turned sour. My son and his wife, once a beacon of love and support, had morphed into figures I barely recognized. Beneath the surface, I could feel my heart struggling against the reality. Did they truly see me as less than human? Were they so consumed by their own lives that they had forgotten the core of our relationship? I settled onto a long bench, the cool wood against my skin grounding me further. Sighing, I closed my eyes, blocking out the sights that reminded me of joy. I needed to recalibrate, to find strength in the ashes of betrayal. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen, tempted to reach out to my best friend, Clara. A text from her flashed across my mind, an offer of lunch the next day. Before I could overthink it, I pressed send, tapping into the only support system I felt could provide solace. Moments slid by as I sat in the park, breathing in slowly and letting go of the heaviness, if only for the moment. As twilight wrapped around me, I felt a small warmth beside me. An elderly woman had taken a seat on the other end of the bench, eyes twinkling as she pulled out a bag of birdseed. She began scattering the seeds on the ground, laughing softly as birds flocked to her side, pecking eagerly. Do you want some? She offered, motioning toward me with a smile so genuine it broke through my cloud of sadness. I shook my head initially, then paused, a smile creeping onto my face. There was a kindness about her, a reminder that not all interactions were laced with malice. You'd be surprised at how much joy they bring, she insisted, her voice warm and inviting. With a shrug, I accepted a small handful. As I tossed the seeds onto the ground, a daring sparrow eyed me, quickly darting in for a morsel. My heart fluttered at the simplicity of that moment. Perhaps, amidst my turmoil, I could find pockets of joy, too. The woman started sharing stories of her late husband, of the years they had spent feeding birds together, and I found myself listening intently. She painted vivid portraits of love and laughter, reminding me that bonds, once unbreakable, could also evolve and become tender in their remembrance. Yet beneath the surface of our conversation, the gnawing worry remained. I couldn't vanish into a world of warmth and light when shadows loomed closer at home. After a while, I felt the pressing need to return to the reality I could no longer ignore. The woman placed a hand over mine, her smile fading slightly as if sensing my burden. Live your life, dear. Don't let anyone steal your joy, she said softly, leaving a trace of hope that lingered in the air. I walked back home, the weight of my choices still heavy but feeling slightly lighter. Stepping inside, I hesitated, listening for any signs of movement. The quietness was foreboding, a potent reminder of the unease festering in our lives. Slowly, I opened the door to the kitchen and was met with the sight of my son and his wife, their faces devoid of laughter, absorbed instead in the glow of a laptop. "Mom!" my son exclaimed, his smile faltering as I stepped toward them. "We were just looking for you." The words smoothed over the edges of the moment like balm, but doubt still lingered in the air, sharp as glass. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, interact normally, but my heart raced with anxiety. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady in contrast to the turmoil flooding my mind. His wife turned to look at me, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk about finances and, health," she said, searching for the right words. The conversation that followed felt like cold steel on my skin, full of implications and underlying tensions. Each discussion of policies and plans chipped away at the flickering flames of hope I had kindled that evening, and then it came the email alert on the screen, announcing my upcoming doctor's appointment to discuss test results. My son glanced at it, and I watched as the mirth faded from his demeanor, anxiety taking root in his eyes. "Mom, what are the results?" he asked, concern replacing the playful tone of earlier. I felt a chill wash over me, the realization crashing in that perhaps the casual bet had evolved into a much deeper fear of loss. "I'm not sure yet," I whispered, suddenly unsure how to even respond. The kindness of that stranger flickered at the edges of my consciousness, a reminder to spread my wings, to lift my spirit, yet here I stood on the precipice of an unfathomable cliff. The choices laid out before me were knotted and frayed, my path obscured by familial love entwined with fear, but one thing was clear: I could no longer remain passive. The choice was mine to make, to stand strong amidst uncertainty or to unravel in dread. My gaze met their anxious expressions, and in that moment, I realized that living meant confronting my fears head-on. "Soon," I said, settling into my own resolve. "When the time is right, I'll tell you everything." But deep inside, the truth weighed heavily on my heart, because soon could mean too late. As the silence hung heavy, I caught a glimpse of my son's eyes, and felt the crack in our bond slowly widen, lurking between shadows and half-formed truths, and I knew this battle was far from over. The chill of uncertainty wrapped itself around me, a relentless shroud that I could no longer ignore. My son's question echoed in my mind, carving a hollow space in the fragile fabric of our family bond. As I stood amidst the weight of eclipsing shadows, uncertainty didn't just feel heavy, it felt insidious, promising to seep into every corner of my life. Days slipped away like grains of sand through my fingers, each morning tinged with a semblance of normalcy that felt increasingly out of reach. I went through the motions, attending to minor tasks that felt deceptively significant, sorting through bills, watering the plants, and preparing meals often left untouched. Each act felt like a whispered prayer to the universe. Maybe this time, the tide would turn. Clara, my steadfast friend, became my refuge. We met for lunch as planned, her laughter a balm against the haunting whispers of vulnerability. I yearned to share the truth of my situation, but by the time we parted, I found myself only skimming the surface. Instead, we talked about everything else, the cheesy book club debacles, her daughter's recent dance recitals, and our mutual love for chocolate cake. However, when I walked away, the visit only deepened my sense of isolation. I would have given anything to let her carry my burden for a while. Returning home, I faltered at the sight of my son and his wife, seated together at the kitchen table in hushed conversation. The sight tightened my chest. It was a reminder of the disconnect simmering beneath our daily routine. I hesitated at the threshold, an uninvited intruder in my own life. Mustering a smile, I stepped inside. "Hey, what are you two discussing?" Their startled expressions sent a ripple of unease through me. Their conversation quickly clipped. "Just planning for the holidays," my daughter-in-law replied, her voice strained while forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Planning is good," I offered, trying to sound light-hearted, even though the undercurrent of tension felt palpable. I busied myself with chores in the adjacent room, their whispers creeping through the cracks in the door like secrets yearning to be heard. That evening, as darkness draped over the city, I curled up on the couch, forcing myself to engage with my favorite series, but my thoughts drifted inevitably toward the future, what it might look like, what choices still lay ahead. I wanted to be strong, to display resilience, but between moments of clarity lay gaping holes filled with uncertainty. I felt myself suspended between the past and the unknown, longing for something to anchor me to the present. A sudden knock echoed through the stillness, stirring me from my reverie. My heart raced as I opened the door to find Clara standing there, eyes wide and filled with an urgency I couldn't place. "I had a feeling you might need a friend tonight," she said, her smile brimming with familiarity yet hinting at deeper concern. We settled into my living room, its cozy chaos reflecting years of shared memories between us. "What's bothering you?" she asked gently, her brow furrowing as I dodged her gaze. I hesitated, my heart wrestling with the urge to reveal the simmering turmoil that shadowed my life. A soft sigh escaped me. "I don't want to burden you," I said, finally admitting what had haunted me for days. "It's just everything feels so fragile." "Talk to me," Clara urged, her voice unwavering as she leaned closer, willing me to share. But just as I opened my mouth to speak, my son's voice drifted from the other room, a whisper carrying a mix of anxiety and anger. "We have to figure this out. We can't go on like this." I froze, caught in a dance of dread and curiosity. "What are they talking about?" I murmured, barely aware I had spoken aloud until Clara shot me a concerned glance. "Whatever it is, it does not sound good," she encouraged softly, sensing my turmoil. "You need to confront this directly." My heart pounded as I swallowed my courage. "Excuse me," I said, rising from the couch with a determination I could barely muster, stepping towards the kitchen as if approaching the precipice of a storm. Each step felt like a mad gamble on the integrity of my family. "What's going on?" I interjected, my voice steady but underlined with urgency. Their heads snapped toward me, and the silence that followed was thick and unnatural, charged with apprehension. Finally, my son broke the silence. "We were talking about what happens if," when he faltered, and his voice cracked. "When you get worse." My breath hitched, words dancing on the tip of my tongue, fighting against a tide of unspoken truths. The warmth I clung to slipped away like sand through my fingers, and suddenly, the connection I had feebly stitched together with hope felt more precarious than ever. "Worse?" I echoed, the word tasting foreign. My heart raced, sharp eyes narrowing as the shadows of our conversations loomed like gathering clouds. "You think I'm getting worse?" His eyes flickered with desperation, tugging at my heart. "Mom, we need to be practical. We need to discuss the future." And then he took a breath as if bracing himself for the inevitable. "Are you prepared for anything?" I felt the ground shift beneath me. Impending storm I sensed circling back with a vengeance. And in that moment, I realized how far we had indeed fallen apart, hopelessly tangled in the weight of unsaid words and fears that stood between us like an unmovable wall. I suddenly comprehended the truth. It was time to confront my truth, to demolish the boundaries fortified by silence and fear. Clarity and dread mingled in my chest, swirling until I felt as if I might explode. I had chosen to live, but what kind of life was this where love battled fear, where our truths hid behind a facade of normality? "I'm still here," I said firmly, bracing for my next words, each one imbued with newfound strength. "And I will share my journey with you, but you must meet me halfway." Their bewildered faces stared back at me as I gathered the threads of emotion unraveling at my feet. "Tomorrow," I promised myself silently. "Tomorrow, I'll bear it all." But just as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed across the table, a notification flashing a reminder of my test results scheduled for that very same morning. And so the looming truth crashed down. The storm I had feared for myself, and now my family, was inching ever closer, a tempest that could tear apart the fragile strands of hope I had just begun to weave. The morning light seeped through the curtains, illuminating a space that felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. This was my home, yet within its walls, I sensed an ever-growing distance among the loved ones who shared it. Each passing day held a weight I couldn't shake off, one that settled deep in my bones and etched itself into my thoughts. The clock ticked steadily, a relentless reminder that time moved on regardless of my feelings. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, bracing myself for a new day. The gentle creases forming around my eyes caught my gaze, whispering stories of a life lived with joy, challenges, and hopes. I splashed water on my face, as if to wash away the specter of dread looming over me. As I made my way to the kitchen, the smell of coffee wafted through the air, a comforting anchor to guide me amidst the storm of uncertainty. My son flipped pancakes, the soft sounds of batter sizzling on the griddle mingling with the hopeful chatter of his wife. But, despite the seemingly cheerful atmosphere, I felt an invisible thread tightening around my heart, the same thread that had begun to fray during last night's conversation. "Good morning," I called, injecting as much cheer as I could muster. They turned, their smiles stretching across their faces like a warm embrace, yet I sensed cracks beneath the sunny veneer. "Happy birthday, Mom," my daughter-in-law chimed, her voice bright but laced with a subtle apprehension that sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you, sweetie," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of joy. It was my birthday, a date once filled with expectation and celebration, now marred by fears I refused to name. As we sat together, sharing breakfast and stories from the past, I watched my son steal glances in my direction, his gaze occasionally narrowing with concern. I felt like an exhibit on display, my insides churning with the urgency to pull him close, to share the tumult that echoed in my mind, yet I held back. The last thing I wanted was to echo the ominous weight of unspoken words that circled us like vultures ready to prey. After breakfast, I retreated into my sanctuary, my overgrown garden, the one place where I could lose myself in the beauty of nature, the only thing that felt consistently vibrant. As I knelt to tend to the flowers, weeds curling around their bases, I caught myself reflecting once more on the fruitless conversation from the previous night. How were they so willing to bet against me? To relinquish hope in my fight against an invisible foe? "Hey," Clara's voice broke through the confines of my thoughts, her presence a grounding force. She stepped through the gate, an unexpected surprise that brought a flicker of light to my weary heart. "I brought a cake," she announced, holding up a decadent chocolate creation adorned with candles that sparkled like tiny fireworks. "Oh, Clara." My spirits lifted. The simple gesture felt monumental, a balm for the doubts festering within me. "You're too sweet, just wait until you taste it," she grinned and motioned for me to follow her back to the patio. Within moments, laughter echoed across the yard as we reminisced about birthdays gone by, memory a thread weaving us closer against the chaos of the world outside. However, with moments of joy came reminders of my reality, like shadows chasing light. As we laughed, I caught sight of my son standing at the window, arms crossed, a furrowed brow deepening as he observed us. The contrast between the mirth around the table and the tension radiating from him created a rift I could feel even from a distance. "Everything okay, Jake?" I called, the concern bubbling to the surface. "Yeah, just one sec, Mom," he replied, his voice strained as he stepped back from the window, closing the curtain almost as if to shield me from the storm brewing within. I felt the shift, a deepening cloud of tension that threatened to spill over into our fleeting moments of happiness. Retreating into the kitchen, I hugged Clara tightly, whispering my gratitude for her presence. You can't imagine how much this means to me, I confessed, my heart heavy with the knowledge I carried. Of course, I do. You're my best friend. I would do anything for you, she said, and, for a fleeting moment, the world felt lighter. But beneath the weight of our shared laughter lay an unaddressed chasm, one that demanded to be bridged. I needed the words to spill, to reclaim the narrative of my life, even if it meant rocking the fragile boat our family had been navigating. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door jolted me from my reverie. I exchanged a glance with Clara before bracing for another uninvited intrusion into my sanctuary. I opened the door to find a stranger standing before me, a man in a dark coat with an air of urgency and curiosity. "Mrs. Thompson?" he asked, his voice steady yet laced with something that made my heart race. "Yes, that's me." "How can I help you? I have something important that you need to see," he replied, a brief flicker of hesitation crossing his face, as if he was battling something far more significant than our casual exchange. "It's about your test results. We need to discuss the implications." The air was charged, and in that moment, all the laughter, memories, and fleeting joys imploded like a dying star. I stood at the threshold, the world behind me contrasting sharply with the uncertain future looming ahead. As the man stepped inside, I felt the gravity of my decision wash over me. Behind me, my family waited, they were fractured yet whole, anchored in a chaotic sea. But the echoes of unasked questions whispered a taunting reminder: what if the storm I had feared was already here? The weight of the man's presence filled the room, pushing against my chest like a vice. I could feel the warmth of my kitchen retreating, replaced by the icy dread curling around my heart. "Please, come in," I managed, trying to project a calmness I did not feel. Clara's eyes widened, darting between our faces as if gauging the implications of this unexpected visitor. In an absurd twist of fate, my birthday cake, adorned with candles and frosting that once sparkled with promise, now felt like a cruel joke. After a few steps, the man turned to face me fully, the intensity of his gaze prolonging the silence. "My name is Dr. Carter. I'm a specialist in your condition," he stated, each word precise yet heavy. "I bring news about your recent test results." I struggled to maintain eye contact, my throat constricting at the implication that hung like a dark cloud around us. I felt the shadows pushing in, the cacophony of thoughts spiraling, questions racing through my mind, anxious thoughts tangling with dreams yet to be realized. "What do you mean? Has something changed? Your test results indicate that the treatment you've been undergoing it's no longer effective." The words fell from his lips like stones, heavy and unyielding. "We can discuss alternative therapies, but you should be aware that time is of the essence." The world around me slowed, vacuum sealed in disbelief. The kitchen faded away, the vibrant kitchen table and the backdrop of laughter swallowed by the gaping void of my reality. I glanced back at Jake and Clara. They remained blissfully unaware of the impending storm unfolding around their mother, lost in their routine and rituals of the day. "Time," I whispered, barely registering the word as it echoed in my mind. I shook my head, battling against the suffocating truth trying to take root. "I am terribly sorry," Dr. Carter continued, his tone a fragile blend of professionalism and empathy. "I understand that this is difficult, especially now." "Now? My birthday?" I snapped, incredulous. The tension in my voice surprised even me, ripping through the fragile veneer of control I clutched. "Why now? I know this is the least ideal moment, Mrs. Thompson, but understanding your prognosis will allow you to make informed choices moving forward." He paused, studying my face with a compassion that felt both comforting and unsettling. "You have more options than you realize, but you must act quickly." I didn't respond. Instead, I found myself feeling lighter, like I had been granted permission to breathe again. All those days spent wrapped in doubt and fear were now mingled with the flicker of rebellion, a desire to reclaim my own narrative. Yet a sharp pang of grief nagged at my edges, merging with anger at the unfairness of life weighing against my chest. "Thank you, Dr. Carter," I said finally, my voice steadying. "But I need some time to process." "Of course. Take all the time you need." He nodded, stepping back toward the door, allowing me a breath of space and an opportunity to gather my thoughts. As he turned to leave, a thought ignited a flicker of anger within me. Jake's face appeared in my memory, the way he had looked at Clara when he believed I wasn't watching. A protective instinct washed over me. Wait. I called out, my heart racing. I'd like you to tell my family. I can't do it alone. He hesitated, but nodded slowly. I'll be waiting in the car. Take your time. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Clara and my son, blissfully unaware of the thundercloud now looming above us. Facing them was the next hurdle, a delicate dance to prevent unleashing chaos into our fragile gathering. I swallowed hard, that familiar knot tightening. I needed to tread thoughtfully, to gauge their reactions like walking on eggshells. Jake, Clara? I called, forcing a semblance of normalcy to wash over the room. They turned, the smiles on their faces shimmering with warmth that felt like both a gift and a hazard. What's up, Mom? Jake asked, a gentle curiosity dancing in his eyes. Can I ask you both to sit down for a moment? I gestured toward the table, trying my best to keep my hands steady and my heart unclenched. What's going on? Clara's tone shifted, concern creeping into her voice as they both took seats. I inhaled deeply, collecting the scattered pieces of my courage. There's something I need to discuss with you. Something significant. I hesitated, deliberating the weight of the word's imprisonment. The delicate balance of hope and despair hung in the air, the anticipation starkly palpable. But before I could reveal the truth, the doorbell interrupted us, shattering the moment like fragile glass. Mom, I'll get it, Jake said, rising from his chair, instinctually trying to shield me from the potential chaos beyond the door. Now wait. I cried out, desperate and instinctual, but it was too late. As he pulled the door open, the look on his face shifted from confusion to shock. I bolted from my seat, my pulse racing as a figure familiar yet unexpected stepped into the threshold. Matt. I stammered, my heart dropping as disbelief rushed through me. What are you doing here? He paused, looking as if he had been tackled by the weight of the world, his eyes reflecting a storm that hadn't calmed since the last time I saw him. I had to come. It's urgent. In that moment, the threads of our lives intertwined in an indomitable note, a bond tested by fate, lengthened by silence, and woven anew by the truths we now faced. The day I had hoped would be filled with light swirled into a storm, threatening to unravel everything I had fought to build, leaving me standing at the brink of unknown choices. The shock of seeing Matt surged through me like a flash of lightning, illuminating the depths of confusion and dread surrounding my heart. Memories of laughter and comfort tumbled through my mind, tangled with the associations of our last encounter, a bittersweet goodbye that hung like a specter over my life. What do you mean urgent? I breathed, glancing back at Clara and Jake, their eyes flitting between us, searching for clarity. Matt stepped inside, hesitating as if to shield us all from the tempest brewing within. I heard about your situation, he said slowly, each word laden with the weight of unspoken truths. I thought you should know there are new developments, possibilities, and people willing to help you. The air thickened with anticipation, a current of unfulfilled promise that threatened to sweep me away. What are you talking about? I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. Each new piece of information felt like a potential burden added to my shoulders. Medical trials, he replied, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes, the kind of hope that felt both intoxicating and terrifying. I've been talking to some people. They can offer you something, treatment that hasn't been explored yet. It just came across my desk, and I thought of you. I stood paralyzed, considering the implications. My mind raced through a labyrinth of questions, battling against fear. What if this was yet another false lead? What if my time was still slipping through my fingers like sand? My gaze strayed again to my children, their faces blossoming with both concern and confusion. They're saying it could change everything, that people have had remarkable success with it, Matt continued, the urgency in his voice rising. This isn't just an option, it could be a real chance. But the shadow of my reality loomed larger. Matt, I faltered, shaking my head. I'm not even sure how much time I have left. And I don't want to raise their hopes only to have them come crashing down. You deserve to know all your options, he insisted, the steadfastness in his eyes begging me to trust him, to believe in something more than despair. We can look into this together. For a heartbeat, my world tilted, swaying toward the possibility of hope. Yet that flicker of uncertainty whipped through me again. What if I couldn't see it through? What if I was fighting against something insurmountable? My insides twisted, churning with a raw conflict and instinct to retreat into the shell I had built around myself, to protect my children from pain, Mom? Jake's voice was tentative as he stepped forward. What's going on? Even Clara shifted in her seat, sensing the charged atmosphere that had enveloped us. I took a breath, each inhalation punctuated by vulnerability, and made the decision to share. I received news about my health today. The treatments haven't been working, I said, my words tumbling out like stones from a broken dam. But Matt thinks there might be new possibilities. Trials that could offer hope beyond what I have now. Clara's eyes widened, and I could read the dawning comprehension and hope swirling within them, could hear the gears of her mind aligning, processing the precariousness of our current reality. She rose slowly, sliding her arm around my waist, pressing herself against me with unguarded support. Mom, you can't give up, Jake added, his voice firm yet tender. This is your chance. We can do this together. We're with you. Their words ignited something inside me, a flickering flame against the blanket of darkness that sought to suffocate all aspirations. It was there, nudging at the edges of a burgeoning sense of control, the belief that life, the one I had cherished and fought for amidst illness, wasn't done with me yet. But the stability of the moment shifted again, when the doorbell rang once more, an unwanted interlude to my newfound hope. I exchanged glances with Matt, our expressions mirroring the same apprehension. Stay here, I urged my children, my voice low and steady. I'll get it. As I approached the door, I steadied my breath, hoping it was just the neighbor's cat or a forgotten delivery. However, when I turned the handle, my heart plummeted. Standing there was a woman, her shoulders squared and demeanor bearing an edge of authority that sent alarm bells ringing in my heart. Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you, she said, her voice clipped yet decidedly calm. It's regarding your case. What? I stammered, feeling a wave of dread wash over me as I looked back toward the living room where my children were now standing, eyes wide, trading worried glances. Her gaze hardened, clearly dismissing the tranquil domesticity behind me. We need to discuss your ongoing treatment. Immediate decisions must be made, and I don't believe your family is fully informed of all implications. My heart thundered in my chest. The stone I had been balancing precariously on was suddenly rolling, shifting uncontrollably. As the door swung wide open, pulling me into a confrontation with my reality once again, I felt the hallowed space of my birthday slip further into the shadows. Before I could react, the familiar yet crushing grip of urgency pulled me under, a moment teetering on the brink of revelation or devastation. Now, everything hung in the balance. Time was slipping through my fingers again, as unknown choices swirled around me, ready to dictate the trajectory of my life in ways I had yet to comprehend. My heart raced as the woman's words sank in, echoing ominously through the thin walls of our home. I glanced back into the living room, where Clara and Jake remained frozen, their faces haunted by a mix of confusion and apprehension. Who are you? I demanded, my voice harder than I felt. The woman's shoes clicked on the wooden floor, a sharp reminder that reality was intruding on my sanctuary. I'm Dr. Hayes, she replied, as though her title could somehow mitigate the storm brewing within me. You need to understand, Mrs. Thompson, that your situation is evolving rapidly, and I fear you might not be grasping the urgency of it all. Urgency? Is that what you call it? Because, for me, all I see is a ticking clock, I spat, my emotions a tangled mess of fear and anger. What is it you really want? Her eyes softened slightly, and I sensed an undercurrent of empathy beneath her authoritative facade. It's about the treatment options you're currently receiving. There's a lack of coherence in your care plan, and time may not be on your side. I promise you, I'm here to help. Her words, laden with implications, felt like cold water thrown on my flickering flame of hope. Help? Or more decisions to make? I just want to reduce the burden on my children. They're scared, and I won't let them down again. She took a step closer, and I was struck by an unexpected warmth in her gaze. Your strength is admirable, but part of that strength is allowing others to support you. It's not about laying down burdens, it's about sharing them. I faltered, a crack opening within the walls I had built. I don't want them to suffer because of me, I whispered, my voice breaking as emotions threatened to consume me. Then fight. Show them you're not done yet. As Dr. Hayes spoke, I sensed a flicker of something familiar, a thread of connection. Perhaps it was the shared vulnerability in our conversation, the way she had stepped into my chaos without pretense, willing to engage with my fear. But as I stood there, my heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty and the reality of what lay ahead, a bright voice shattered my thoughts. "Mom?" Jake called gently from the living room. "Are you okay?" I turned, meeting his worried gaze. Clara stood beside him, a silent pillar of strength. I knew they were waiting for my answer, for reassurance, something concrete to cling to as the storm raged just outside our door. Just a minute," I called back, my voice wavering. I needed time to sort through my emotions, to grapple with the tidal wave of choices crashing over me. Underneath it all, however, a spark ignited a determination that hadn't existed moments before. Perhaps it was the way Clara had squeezed my hand earlier, or the fierce way Jake stood steadfast by my side. I couldn't fracture under this pressure, their love depended on my resilience. "Dr. Hayes, tell me everything," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever the truth is, I need to know now. My family deserves clarity." The doctor nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "Then let's discuss the realities of your options now." As we talked, exchanging details about procedures, risks, and statistics, a knot of anxiety unfurled inside me. I was preoccupied with how my life could pivot yet again. My mind oscillated between fear and determination as I considered what it would mean to dive into the unknown yet one more time. Moments later, my children approached, wrapping their arms around me, creating a fortress of love that made me feel inexplicably powerful, even in the face of uncertainty. I could feel their hearts beating against mine, an affirming rhythm that promised togetherness no matter the outcome. Suddenly, just as I felt grounded, the door swung open, and another familiar face entered, the calm but resolute expression of my sister, Mia. "Sorry to barge in," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I heard about the developments. I had to come. I want to be here for you, whatever you decide." As she stepped closer, her presence filled the room with an unexpected warmth, and for a second, the chaos was stifled by the unyielding bonds of family. But as I took a breath, preparing to share the details of what I had learned, my phone buzzed from the kitchen counter, and I felt my pulse quicken. It was an unknown number, but something deep inside me churned with dread. "Just a moment, I need to take this," I said, the gravity of the moment weighing on me as I stepped away from my family and answered the call. "Mrs. Thompson?" The voice on the other line was crisp and professional, chilling me deeply. "We have urgent news regarding your test results. It's imperative that you come in as soon as possible." My heart sank, the promise of hope abruptly overshadowed by a sense of impending dread. A silence enveloped the room as I stared at the walls that had sheltered me, and I felt the ground shift once more beneath my feet. With the weight of my choices suddenly crashing down on me, I hung up, realization dawning cold and stark. I was teetering on a precipice. This was not merely about managing my illness anymore, it was about facing the possibility that everything I thought I knew was about to alter entirely. I turned back to see Clara's anxious face and the steady reassurance in Jake's eyes. MIA's support was unyielding, but as I stood there lost in the chaos within, I knew with an uncomfortable clarity, the battle was far from over, and choices loomed like shadows, threatening to eclipse everything I had fought so hard to hold on to. The world outside felt impossibly different from the sanctuary we'd built within our four walls. Each ticking second echoed a reminder that time didn't just pass, it flew. And in the space where laughter once filled the air, an impenetrable tension lingered, thick and suffocating. I could feel it pressing down on me as I stood there, the phone still warm in my hand. "Mom?" Jake's voice was closer now, his concern palpable as he stepped into my field of vision. "What did they say?" Swallowing the panic rising in my throat, I forced a smile, but it felt as fragile as glass. "Just more tests," I replied, as if the simple act of omission could insulate them from the chaos. Mia moved forward, her expression torn between empathy and worry. "Whatever it is, we are here for you," she intervened resolutely. "But you have to talk to us. We want to help. You don't have to bear this alone." Clara took a deep breath, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears betraying the strength she was desperately trying to project. "Mom, we can handle whatever it is. Just tell us." In that moment, I cursed the vulnerability that suffocated me, the burden that weighed on my heart, the fear of breaking their spirits beneath the reality of my health. But I knew I couldn't hide forever. They deserved more than half-truths and rehearsed smiles, they needed my honesty. Okay, I began, my voice hoarse with emotion. They called about my test results. They want me in for further evaluations. Is it? Clara's breath hitched, unable to voice the word that loomed specter-like between us. I don't know yet, I admitted, purposely staying vague. But they said it's urgent. They need to assess my condition more closely. Jake squeezed my hand tightly, as if drawing strength from the contact. We'll get through this together, won't we? It's just another hurdle. We always get over them, right? I want to believe that, I said, my heart heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. At that moment, Dr. Hayes stepped into the room again, her presence a reminder that life didn't pause for personal storms. Mrs. Thompson, if I may, I think it's wise to go in for the test sooner rather than later. We can schedule it for first thing tomorrow morning. The sooner we know, the sooner we can plan the appropriate treatment. While part of me wanted to crawl into a corner and retreat from the world, another part knew I couldn't leave my family in the dark. What if it's bad news? I murmured, though the fear twisted in my gut like a serpent. Doctor Hayes looked at me earnestly. Life doesn't stop for bad news, Mrs. Thompson. Wrapping yourself in fear won't change the outcome. It's not the news that defines the experience, but how we choose to respond to it. Her words, surprisingly resolute, sparked a flame within me, suggesting that while the future was uncertain, my choices still lay within reach. You're right, I whispered, feeling my heart slow as a sense of calm settled over the whirlwind inside. Can we come with you tomorrow? Jake asked, his eyes bright with determination. We don't want you going through this alone. Absolutely, Mia chimed in, nodding her approval. Clara let out a tremulous breath. We're a team. You won't face this alone. As fear ebbed slightly in the warmth of their support, a weak smile crept onto my face. These reminders of love, subtle yet powerful, garnered the courage lingering deep within my bones. All right, then. Let's take this one step at a time. Yet, as we settled into the comforting rhythm of family, the phone buzzed again, a staggering interruption that brought every ounce of hope crashing down. I hesitated, understanding that this call, the one I didn't want, would likely hold answers I'd been dreading. Mom? Clara asked, her brow furrowing. It's the clinic, I breathed, my fingertips trembling as I prepared to answer. Please, just breathe, Mia said gently, and I felt her reassuring presence like a shield against my apprehension. I glanced at my family, their anxious faces waiting for what lay behind the door of uncertainty. And through it all, I felt that flicker of resilience igniting once more, pushing me forward even as my mind spun with worry. Hello? I answered, grasping onto the last remaining shreds of control. Mrs. Thompson, this is Dr. Barron. I need to discuss some findings from your latest test. The voice droned on, icy with the gravity of what was to come. Just as the reality of her words struck me, like a freight train barreling down the track, I caught a glimpse of Jake and Clara's worried glances, their eyes reflecting raw fear, something I'd desperately tried to shield them from. Tomorrow at 8, I repeated mechanically, my head spinning as the enveloping weight of this moment pressed down. But then, the voice continued, and my heart lurched violently in my chest. There's something we need to address about the test results, something you need to know immediately. As my breath caught in my throat, I felt my world tilt on its axis again, the ground beneath me giving way to shadows of uncertainty. Everything hung in the balance, and I realized this was just the beginning of a revelation that could unravel everything I'd fought so hard to build. I braced myself, knowing that one piece of information could forever alter the fabric of our shared lives. Mrs. Thompson? I'm here, I replied, my heart pounding as I prepared to face whatever haunting truths awaited. The voice on the other end of the line felt impossibly far away, yet the weight of every syllable it spoke pressed down on me, compressing the air in my lungs. Mrs. Thompson, I believe it would be best if we met to discuss these findings. We need to talk about a potentially critical situation regarding your condition. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white, the connection suddenly feeling like a noose rather than a lifeline. I could sense Jake and Clara moving silently behind me, straining to catch every word laced with dread in my tone. What do you mean critical? I managed to choke out, desperately searching for a thread of hope amidst the rising tide of despair. Doctor Barron paused, and in that hesitation, I felt the world collapsing around me. I must stress that we cannot assume the worst just yet. But based on your results, I'd like to schedule a consultation to go over everything in person. I'll have our nurse set up a time for you immediately. Are you saying it's serious? I whispered, feeling my heart race perceptibly faster with each beat. Let's not jump to conclusions. We need to take a closer look. Dr. Barron's voice slipped into that professional tone, which only fueled my anxiety. I could hear the muffled sounds of my family shifting, wrapping their own trepidation in a veil of quiet hope. All I could think was, what if this was it? The moment I would have to unveil the unthinkable to my children? What if the nightmare I had been skirting around all this time finally bore its fangs, ready to sink deep into the heart of our family, forever altering the lives of those I loved most? All right, I forced myself to say as the words expanded adrift in the silence that hung heavy around us. Please set the appointment for as soon as possible. Of course, I'll have our assistant call you with the details. I'll be here to answer any questions, she provided, her voice wrapping around me like a damp blanket. With a heavy exhale, I hung up the phone, its crisp ringtone suddenly seeming like a siren celebrating the arrival of chaos where peace once dwelled. My gaze lifted toward my children. Their eyes were wide, unblinking mirrors of concern. Mom? Jake stepped forward, a hesitant warmth rising to meet my gaze. What did she say? I struggled to find the words that wouldn't crush them. The whispered doubts and an unmistakable dread die hard under the surface like an invisible predator. We need to see her again. The results weren't clear, and they want to schedule another appointment. What does that mean? Clara's voice wavered, a fragile thread woven of hope and fear, the perfect image of the storm brewing inside me. It means they need to take a deeper look, I replied, carefully choosing my words as I weighed the panic that rose in my own chest. Don't worry, it's just what? Mia interrupted, her voice edged with impatience. Mom, you can't sugarcoat it. What are we dealing with? The room felt like it was shrinking as I wrestled with the truth. Part of me still wanted to protect them, to hide the reality that was carving into my heart, while another part screamed for honesty. I don't know. The admission gnawed at me. I'm scared, and I can't pretend that's not true. At that moment, we seemed suspended in a heartbreaking limbo. Each second passing brought an excruciating clarity. The fear that knotted around my heart was shared among us. I watched as their faces betrayed their worst imaginings. What if it is bad news? Clara asked quietly, shifting nervously on her feet. We have to be strong, Jake replied, trying to find the silver lining in the clouds that gathered thickly above us like an impending storm. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. As I looked at my children's faces, I saw the spirit that they held, fragile yet unyielding, blooming even in the shadows of my illness. The love we shared intertwined like roots anchoring us. They were terrified, and yet they stood by me, fierce. As I crumpled inward, remembering Dr. Hay's words, I mustered a fragile smile. That's right. One step at a time. Just like before, and yet, with every reassuring murmur that left my lips, a familiar face flashed in my mind. Kevin, my estranged brother. The years of silence bubbled up like old wounds left unhealed. Suddenly, beneath the pain, a flicker of hope sparked. Maybe I should reach out to Kevin, I murmured, surprised at the thought tumbling from my lips. Kevin? Mia blinked in confusion, her brow furrowed. Why would you want to talk to him? Because he might have some information or insight, I replied, feeling an unexpected rush of courage. And maybe he can help us navigate this together. The room fell silent. My children stared at me in disbelief, caught between concern and the hope of reaching across family divides that had long been entrenched. Mom, you haven't spoken to him in years, Jake said cautiously, uncertainty threading his words. What if it makes things worse, or what if it changes everything? I countered, a spark of defiance igniting deep within me. I needed strength beyond my own, and for the first time in years, I began to see a glimmer of a way forward, not just for me, but for my entire family. As we sat together, enveloped in uncertainty, it dawned on me that reaching out to my brother was a risk worth taking. With the issues we faced looming vast and frightening before us, perhaps a path to hope lay in mending broken fences, in opening a door long sealed. Before I could share my resolve, the phone rang again, slicing through the tension like a knife. The abrupt sound propelled my heart into an anxious rhythm once more. I felt the familiar hesitation creep over me, but my determination hardened. This was a moment that could threaten to unravel or redefine us. "Maybe it's the clinic again," Clara murmured, bracing for the call that shifted the ground beneath us but might also open new avenues of possibility. As I raised the phone once more, my mind raced with questions both for help and about the future. This wasn't just about my health, it was about healing. And as the call continued to ring, uncertainty gripped my heart tightly, but within that fear glimmered the flickers of hope I had so long fought to find. And with those thoughts swirling in the storm of my heart, I answered, prepared for anything that might come next. The echoes of the ringing phone faded into the background as I steadied my breath, determined to seize the moment rather than let it slip through my fingers. I answered, and a familiar voice came through the clinic receptionist, with that signature blend of professionalism and compassion. "Mrs. Thompson, we have you scheduled for an urgent consultation tomorrow morning at 8. Please remember to arrive 15 minutes early." Just like that, the world crystallized into a singular focus. My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but beneath the weight of uncertainty, an anchor began to take form: clarity. I may not know the outcome, but I would face it head-on. "Thank you," I replied, barely above a whisper, feeling the strength of my resolve solidify like armor around my heart. I hung up, my gaze drifting toward Jake and Clara, their faces enveloped in cautious yet unwavering love. "We have a plan," I said, finding a rhythm to my voice, an echo of the newfound courage circulating inside me. "Tomorrow, we face the truth together." Jake stepped forward, his broad shoulders reflecting determination. "I'm ready," he insisted, and Clara nodded resolutely beside him. Even with the weight of fear pressing down on our family, there was something so liberating about confronting the unknown as a unit. I wrapped my arms around them, drawing them in close, enveloped in the warmth of our shared strength. "Whatever happens, we stick together," I said softly, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. It was a promise one I felt within the marrow of my bones. As night descended, the atmosphere in the house shifted, transforming from one of dread to tentative hope. We shared stories, recounting happier times, creating pockets of laughter that pushed back against the encroaching shadows. As we revisited memories, my heart surged with gratitude not just for the lives we had built together, but for the undeniable gift of love that permeated every corner of our existence. In that sacred space, I felt the barriers I had set around my heart begin to dissolve, replaced by an overwhelming sense of belonging. Yet, lingering in the recesses of my mind, reminders of my estranged brother loomed like an unanswered question. Kevin, the day we had parted on bitter terms, had etched a wound that never fully healed. But our current crisis called for unity, and the thought of reaching out to him ignited a flicker of hope despite the uncertainty that surrounded our estrangement. It was a risk, but I could feel the ties of family wrapping around my heart, weaving a promise of detours and roads yet to travel. In the early hours of the morning, I woke before dawn, the sky draped in the vibrant hues of dawn, its ethereal glow kissing the world awake. As I slipped out of bed and padded into the living room, I found a quiet moment to gather my thoughts. I had been ruminating about Kevin, his absence joining the clutch of fears I was grappling with. With a resolve born from desperation, I pulled out my phone and hesitated only momentarily before dialing his number, the sound of the ringing echoing my quickened heartbeat. Would he answer? What would I even say? Before I could lose my nerve, I pictured Jake and Clara, their faces filled with concern. I wanted to share this moment with the family that wasn't just marked by blood but by love. After what felt like a lifetime, the line clicked, and I heard his familiar voice, one I once adored, blending both comfort and confusion. "Hello? Kevin," I started, my voice wavering but steadying as I continued. "It's me, Sarah." A wave of nostalgia hit me hard, but I pushed through. "I hope you're well." "Sarah." He stammered in disbelief, his voice laden with years of silence. "I know it's been years, please, I don't want to dwell on the past. I'm calling because I need your help." The words felt foreign yet liberating, a release of years of baggage I had carried. "Help? What do you mean?" I'm facing some health challenges, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. And time is of the essence. I could use your insight. I know you have contacts in the medical field. Maybe you could help me navigate this. A pause lingered on the line, stretching into eternity. Then I heard Ida's shift in his voice, warmer now, softer. Of course, I'll do whatever I can to help. Please, just tell me what you need. It was an unexpected balm for the years of hurt, an olive branch offered on a day that seemed destined for confrontation with the unknown. And for the first time in a long while, I felt my heart open just a little more, allowing the light to seep in. 2 hours later, my family and I found ourselves seated in the doctor's office, the atmosphere punctuated by an anxious silence. After some careful discussions and assessments, we finally met with Dr. Barron. Her presence was both steadfast and strangely soothing despite the gravity of our circumstances. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming in today. I understand this is difficult for you. Her words hung in the air, weighed down by the silence that enveloped us like a heavy fog. I could feel my children's anxious glances darting between us, anticipation threading the air. We want to know, I said, sheer determination driving my voice. Just tell us what we're dealing with. And as the doctor unraveled her words, explaining the necessary treatment options before us, I felt a spark of empowerment rising once more. The future remained uncertain, but the knowledge that I had not only my family by my side but also the willingness to reconnect and mend broken bonds lent me newfound strength. The fear didn't fade, but it transformed into something I could wield, allowing me to carve out a path not just for myself but for my family. As we left the office that day, hand in hand, I caught a glimpse of hope flaring in the distance. Each step forward filled me with new possibilities, the strength to confront the shadows, to learn, to heal, and to love fiercely when faced with the specters of fear. In that moment, I realized that even through the most tumultuous storms, bonds could be mended, fear transformed into courage, and hope could find its way into the cracks of despair. And as I turned to my children, I spoke the words that had emerged from the depths of my journey: that love, above all else, is the binding force that holds families together through life's greatest tribulations. Together, we were ready to face whatever came next. The horizon ahead brimmed with uncertainty, yet in that very uncertainty lay our greatest gift, the resilience that could carry us through, united as ever, heart to heart. Whatever happens, I whispered as we walked together, trailing fingers through the threads of uncertainty, we will always choose each other.